Hey everyone, my name is Lauren Clausen. So I work for Rapid7 as a security governance analyst. And I just want to give a round of applause to the AV team and our volunteers here at BSides. Thank you. I'm especially excited to be here at BSides and to be sharing this talk. It, to me, fits in very well with the kind of mission statement and ethos of this conference of continuous conversation and learning collaboration. So we are going to have you guys interacting with each other throughout this. So I know if you need to run now, you're like, it's cool, it's cool. So yeah, we're going to have a little bit of a conversation, but I want to just say thank you to BSides for having me here so we can get into this, all work together to generate and share this knowledge. So a little bit about me. My background is a software security engineer. I worked at 2 different government organizations. I was a maker and a breaker doing Android development and a couple other things that I can't really talk about. But following security policies at these kind of places isn't optional. It's necessary, right? If you break policy, you get a written warning from the security team. You could potentially lose your job or your clearance, or you could spend up to 10 years in federal prison. So that's pretty high stakes for following the rules. When I got to Rapid7 and after I left this kind of industry, I found that that structure was kind of taken for granted. A lot of people in this industry and in the corporate world don't have these constraints on them to really follow those security policies and even think with security in mind. So when I got to Rapid7, my role became to re-engage and retrain our users. How do we get people to think about security without these massive personal consequences? So how many people in the room have taken some kind of security awareness training? Yeah, that's expected, right? How many people had a really great experience with their security awareness training? Cool. What are you guys doing here? No, I'm just kidding. That's kind of expected, right? How many people remember what was in the security awareness training that they took? Okay, cool. You are the security people, and half the room raised their hand. Think about all of the people that don't care about security taking that training, and how many of them remember maybe anything at all. So that's the problem we're here to talk about today. We have really smart people working at our companies, or at least I hope so. And getting these people to think about security might be a little bit out of their comfort zone. So how do we take people back to that beginner mindset of, I'm an expert in my field, but I don't really know about security. And how do we get them into that frame of mind so we can train them and teach them the ways to do that? So a lot of these people have that, it won't happen to me, I'm not going to do that, I wouldn't fall for that kind of mindset, but we all know that they do. Security awareness training doesn't just have to be a compliance checkbox. We have this opportunity to really train our users about things that we think are important and that our company feels are important. And we all know the stories. Someone gets a flash drive in the mail and it says, very important data for your company, and they just plug it in. Or we have this guy who's so generously holding open the door to the person that forgot their badge or couldn't, had it in their other purse or whatever it is. Or, Clickbait, we have win a free cruise. Just click this little button and who knows what happens. And passwords, everyone's favorite. So Post-it notes or simple passwords that get taken or stolen, and it affects all of us. So I'm not here to tell you what should be in your security awareness training, because we're all different, right? Our organizations, our users, our company, our industry, everything is different. And what we want to think about with security awareness training is really catering the content to your audience and your environment. So I bet that everyone in this room has security policies that are different than the person sitting next to them, and that's a good thing, because all of us, as I said, are different. When we talk to our employees about training and security, we really need to keep that in mind, that what we're training them on is relevant to them, that it's something they're interested in, and that they're going to remember after they watch the video or whatever it is, and keep that with them as they go through their day-to-day. So my goals for today are to offer you some new tools in thinking about security awareness training and a different way to think about it so that you can really reach your employees and your users and share this information with them. Some immediate impact, we're going to have discussions with some of your neighbors, and then we can bring it all back together. So hopefully you'll walk away with some new tools and something that you can take home with you to customize to your audience how you're going to train them. So when I got to Rapid7, the way we started with this process of redoing and revamping our security awareness training program was identifying what the gaps were. So where do you need to work on training your users? Is there a specific thing that comes to mind of like, oh yeah, everybody's breaking this policy or this rule or doing this behavior, and why is that? So we want to talk about what the problem is, and I'm going to go into some Rapid7 examples of what we looked at. And then the why, right? So without explaining to your users or your consumers why this is important, it's never going to stick with them. They're never going to implement it. So it's really changing that behavior and letting them learn from these trainings. So I'll talk about what we came up with at Rapid7, why it was relevant and why we cared about it, and then how we actually trained people and offered these opportunities for learning. Then we're going to have you guys talk to each other. You'll have this opportunity to pick out the points where maybe your security program is lacking or the training program has a gap and how we can step forward with it. So here's 3 examples from Rapid7. This first one, our acceptable use policy. So most people have this in place. For us, we had users who didn't fully understand this policy, that they were making mistakes without even knowing that there was potentially a security risk. So one example is at Rapid7 in our acceptable use policy, every time you walk away from your computer, you're supposed to lock your computer, right? We have technical controls in place, automatic screensavers, that after a certain amount of time, the computer locks itself. But we have an unwritten rule that if you find a computer unlocked and you happen to access it, you can send out an email to the whole office with the subject line, donuts, and the next day, the owner of that computer has to bring in donuts for the whole office. So you would think that this is a pretty good deterrent for leaving your computer unlocked, but you'd be surprised how much people like donuts. Another example, as a company that creates security products, we have a lot of people around who are really smart and very interested in security. And often that leads to them, hacking around and scanning networks or building exploits and whatever it is. We have Metasploit if you are out here taking a look at our products. So we have people doing these things that are a part of their job, and that's really great. But it's not so great when it's on our corporate network or it's open where it could cause real harm. So why, right? That's our what. Those were our 2 gaps. The why is scanning networks is obviously a precursor to a cyber attack. It alerts our security team. We're getting flagged by this a lot. So how do we get users to not do that behavior internally to set it up on one of our lab networks? For the donutting, physical access, if your computer is open long enough for someone to send an email, it's not open long enough for them to take data. So segregating that data. So our solution, what we did, this acceptable use for us was one of our low-hanging fruit. It was an opportunity to address a lot of issues in one setting. So we created a video in-house that had our security team speaking to each of these issues. So this gave us an opportunity to get people to see our team and then also to learn about the reasons that we have these policies in place so that they can actually implement them and understand and not just look at it as a rule, right? Like, oh, this says it, so I have to do it, but it says it because this is the risk. So for all of the software that we don't allow, we talked about the why and how this really affects our company that you're doing these behaviors. We got our head of InfoSec to get on camera and say, I'm the person that's receiving these alerts at 11:30 at night or 2 a.m., whatever it is. Stop doing this because I'm getting this notification, you're wasting our time and our resources when really we want to be focusing that in other ways. Some of the results of this training, after we released it, we got a lot of good feedback from it, but we were also now able to track exceptions. As I said, there's people, this is their job, so we want to know who is doing this, when they're doing it, so that we can approve certain use cases where this is okay, right? We had a couple of people reporting violations, which can get into a little bit hairy of an area, but it was cool, again, to then go to those people that were potentially in violation of this policy and say, how can we work with you to fix this? How can we find a solution that all of us are feeling comfortable with? We also had a lot more people talking about security. So if you put your goofy security team in front of the camera and send it out to the whole company, a lot of people are going to be talking about it. And it was cool to have that conversation and see those conversations going on. It gave us an opportunity to discuss with people why we have this and what we're talking about. Less donuts, that's questionable. Okay, another gap that we identified was password management. We have a single sign-on solution that and two-factor authentication, so we have technical controls, but we found that there were still some users that were insecurely storing their passwords and that were reusing passwords or sharing passwords in ways that we didn't approve of. Why is this an issue? Obviously, passwords are the keys to the kingdom, so we want to make sure they're secure, and sharing that with our users to explain each of those little bits was really important. So one of our solutions is right here. We have a bot in our chat application that pops up. If you type the word password, you get this little alert that says, are you trying to send a password over Slack? Please use secure file transfer instead. And it gives you the link to how you can send that information securely. We did discover that people were abusing the bot quite a lot. The word password comes up in conversation quite a bit, so this bot was getting a lot of use. We ended up adapting as we went forward to say, can you send me the password? We'll now alert this, and it has a couple more heuristics included. So our solution, in addition to things like the bot, were in-person training for groups that were specifically at risk. So we sat down with some of the departments that were sharing these kind of information. For us, our marketing department has all the social media information for our company, right? So they had to share the Twitter password or the whatever link so they could get that information out to people. And we wanted to give them a solution that could make that easier without being insecure. So we have a password management tool that we implemented. There are many of them: LastPass, OnePass, KeyPass, or OnePassword, sorry. And these are all great solutions to give your users an alternative to the insecure ways that they're doing it. And in a lot of ways, it makes their life a lot easier, which is always a good thing. So as a result, again, we were having violations being reported to us, which gave us more opportunity for enablement. We could then reach out to the group that had their passwords listed somewhere public in the company and say, hey guys, this maybe isn't the best way to do this. Can we put it here instead? And then user behavior has changed. So we've been able to see how we're getting more traffic through our secure file transfer, and that less passwords are being sent over these insecure channels. Phishing, social engineering. So this is an obvious one, right? This is perpetually the issue. The why on this is 95% of all attacks on enterprise networks originate from spear phishing. 74% of organizations think that this is the biggest risk to their company, someone clicking an email. So being able to address this and let our users know that this is a real issue, these are the things that can happen, and this is what we want you to do about it. Our solutions, we have an annual phishing campaign that we do for all employees. And if you happen to fail the phish and click on it, you get redirected to a full set of training information. So why was this email fake? What could have happened? These are the risks. And we also have an avenue for people to report phishing campaigns or an email they suspect is a phish. We test continuously, and we're sending follow-ups on this so that people are constantly thinking about what they're getting in their email and what they are clicking on, or being phone called about. So what we saw, our last training, I said, was a acceptable use training, and just getting people thinking and talking about security. We actually saw a 10% increase in phishing emails reported over the last quarter. So more people were sending us emails that they thought were suspicious, and we actually had 9 of them that were legitimate phishing attempts. So that's 9 opportunities that we just shut down from someone getting into our network. A lot of our response to phishing is an automated process where we're analyzing the email and all the URLs that are in it, so that we can determine whether this is a true or false positive. So we're not perfect. When we sent out our last email for our acceptable use training, this is what the email looked like. Yeah, does this look like it might be a fish? Because our users thought so. So basically we say this is a required activity, this is the deadline, it's going to be a exception on our SOC 2 report if not everyone fills this out. We say that we train all our employees. So this was the email. Immediately following this, one of our pen testers came up with this message that posted it to our public security channel. It said, that email for completing acceptable use training is the perfect phishing email template. I'm stealing the verbiage and using it for my next engagement. So we also are learning. We have to be better about this. And you know what? That's what it's all about, that we were able to get this feedback and think like, oh yeah, we're telling you not to click phishing emails, but we just sent you an email that looks like one telling you you have to do this. So, you know, continuous learning is a core value at Rapid7, so we're living it on this one. Okay, so we just went through some of the gaps, so the what's and the why, and then how we came out to solve this problem. What we're going to dive into next is some of the takeaways and things we learned at Rapid7 that you can use going forward in your trainings. And these might not work for everyone, but they were things that we found really valuable at the end of ours. So show off your information security team. This is us. This is the end of our video. You get a nice, hilarious shot of us jumping after we just told you for 15 minutes about security. So making the security team, especially for us, available and know who they are, it was awesome to have people come up to us in the hallway and say, oh, I just saw your video, or you were in that training. Even as I was presenting this to one of our marketing people as a dry run before I came here, she was like, yeah, I felt like I had to take it because Katie was in it, and I know her, and she's going to come hunt me down. So having that relatability and people that they know in a video or in a talk or whatever, and it doesn't have to be a video, right? It could be just an email announcement or a newsletter, but keeping the security team at the forefront makes it that much more important for people to pay attention, assuming that your security team is on good terms with the rest of your organization. Accept feedback. So that phishing campaign, phishing email that we just got, that was unsolicited feedback. But we also gave people an opportunity to contact us after we did the training. So our original video was about acceptable use, and a couple things in there were things that people aren't going to like, right? So what are people doing if something's annoying them? They're going to ignore it or try and disable it or just complain about it. So we wanted people to reach out to us, and we provided a way to file an exception. So if you have a legitimate use case for any of the things we tell you you can't do, you can file an exception through our ticketing system that goes to security, and one of us will reach out and answer your question. It might be approved, or we might say, that's not really a legitimate thing. We don't want you doing that. This also forces people to consider why they're doing the behavior, right? If they have to reach out to a question and they're thinking like, oh, but I really want to use this, and they have to type up their explanation, they might realize, oh yeah, that is a gap. So this was really useful for us. We also have public channels where people can reach out to us and ask questions. And we got a lot of that after this training, so that was valuable for us. Share the why. If people don't understand why these things need to happen, they're not going to be able to implement a new behavior. So we're trying to get that ingrained in our users that this is stuff that really matters and this is why. One of the things we talk about is why you can't have games on your computer. And it's not that you're not going to be productive. We trust that you're getting your work done. It's that a lot of these games that you're downloading have malware embedded and we can't update them. And that's introducing risk into our network that we and our environment that we can't fix or don't even know about. So being able to tell people the reasons and then speak to it and have them come back to you was really valuable. Role-based training, nothing is worse than watching or sitting through a training that you don't care about and doesn't apply to you. So taking this opportunity to speak to the things that are relevant to each of your users. The training video that we were using before we had this new one talks about thumb drives and removable media and CDs and disk drives and whatever else. And that is specifically not approved in our policy. So why are we telling people about this when we're then later asking them not to use it at all? So thinking about who your users are and what they need, the fact that we did password management solutions and training for our marketing group who specifically needed to share accounts. And then for future, we're trying to do secure lifecycle development training specifically targeted at our engineers and our product teams. So just thinking about how you can reach out the individual groups that you need to and what you need them to know. And we're all humans, right? So putting yourself in someone else's shoes, it's easy to say this data is at risk and this data getting out would put our company at risk and financial and whatever else. But for you to say, what if you were the person who, if your company has a list of attendees to an event or travel plans, what if that was your information that just became public and now everybody knows where you're going to be at what time? Would you feel okay with that? In the time of social media, maybe you're doing that on your own and then, yeah, cool, whatever. But whatever the example is, thinking about, well, what if that was me? Would I feel cool like sending someone sending my social security number over Slack or whatever it is? So flip that question on your employees and trying to bring that human aspect back to security of that we're all in this together, and if that was you, how would you feel about it? And then keep it going. Refreshers, reminders, notifications. I said newsletters before, or having a public channel. We send out announcements with IT tips or IS tips on a regular basis, and just keeping that security message available for people to go see and refresh. When that Slack bot came out, we were releasing that to our users, and we also were sending out information about the training. So if this is something you need a refresher on, go have a look at it. This is the opportunity for you to do that. So it's not a one and done. We want to provide people this opportunity to see the information and try and pick it up a second time and a third time. You don't have to require it, but having it there that if someone has a question, they can go back and say like, oh yeah, I think that was in there. What did it talk about? Okay, so we talked about at Rapid7 what our gaps were, what the things were that we were looking into and that we needed to fix, and then how we could get that out to our users, what methods we used and what time we took to do that. So what we're going to do now is you guys are going to have a chance to discuss some of this. I'll have 2 questions for you, and we'll get into that. But basically, what is the hardest aspect to train people on in your environment, or where do you think the biggest risk is that you need? And you don't have to get like super specific. You know, we got a lot of hackers in the room. But you can talk about where do you need to improve, or what do you think you would like to improve? And then how do you convey that? So what are some methods or ideas of like, and it can be really specific or really vague. So how do you convey those things to the people that you need to know about them? So we've got the what, right? What are your gaps? What do you need people to know? And what do you want your users to be doing? Why? Why does this matter? Why should I care? And why is this a problem? How? How do you train your users? How do you get this information out? How do you get them to understand why it's important? Okay, here's a list from NIST of all of the potential things that could be in a security awareness training program, right? So these are some ideas for you guys to think about. And the ones highlighted in orange were the ones that I just talked about through here. So feel free to, you can dig into those a little bit more, or you can pick something else. But I want you guys right now to, I'll throw that other slide back up. I want you to introduce yourself to the person next to you. If you're sitting alone, scoot in a little bit. We're going to talk. It's okay. No one bites. And take a couple minutes. I'll give you like 5 minutes each, and we'll see how that goes, to discuss the what, the why, and the how. So here's your chance. I'm going to be walking around, so feel free to grab me over if you have a question or want to talk. Okay, go ahead. The other one? There we go. Yeah. Okay. Wrapping up your last final discussions. Okay. So I love that you guys were really getting into it, and the couple groups that I talked to, there was some real questions of like, well, what do I do? So I want to take this time for you to ask your peers, right? We're all here to learn. So does anybody have something that they came up with that in your small group, or you and your friend talking here, that you were like, I don't know what to do about this? Or anything you want to share that came up? Cool.
Okay, so my English is not so good because I'm Brazilian, no. So I will try here. Okay, we have some challenges in Brazil because some of our users, some of like people that work for our company, is like they have the acknowledgement that about some process of the company, but they don't have a computer. They don't have a smartphone. It's like people there's like mining rocks and like working with the metal and something like this, you know. So these people have a specific acknowledgement about some formulas that we use to like mining rocks and do something like this that I'll explain later for. So how can I like target these people in my security awareness program? You know, like it's hard to me if I have about, I don't know, 13,000 people in my company. You know, it's like, and half of these people is like don't have a computer or a smartphone.
Yeah.
You know, it's global, the company.
Cool.
So how can I target these people in my security awareness program? Like phishing is like, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. We're going back, right? This is just security in general. We're not talking about computers.
Yeah, our guys here is like, oh man, I have phishing problem. Okay, I understand about phishing simulation, about training in phishing, stuff like this, but man, it's like users. You know, they like take a selfie with a password post-it on computer and post it on Instagram. You know, we have this type of problem. Like, we create a solution like to have using machine learning, image recognition to solve this problem.
Yeah.
You know, but how can I like educate my users that don't have a computer and a smartphone? I was thinking like, man, send a drone, you know, with something, because I don't know what to do. You know, it's like I'm just sharing my problems. Like, I'm pissed out here. Like.
No, and that's a cool example, right? That security extends way beyond computers. There's a lot of security we have to talk about. Anybody have an idea for, what's your name, my friend? Igor. Anybody have an idea for Igor of what he can do?
Well, it sounds like you kind of have to go old school yourself and have like posters and flyers and analog stuff, signs and whatnot, like that, to me.
I would think that you could invite groups in, and you could target the groups that you have the most problems with, invite them to lunch, have a contest about security. It'll excite them a little bit. Maybe they'll win an iPad or something or other that you'll have to watch later.
So if there are no official structures that you can use to communicate with them directly and to get them, there will be unofficial structures that you can then use. So do something cool and get the people to talk about it amongst themselves. Well, it might be hard to get a water cooler talk for all the people who are mining rock at the same site. But at least over a few degrees, you will be reaching the people if you can do something cool that the people will then talk about.
Awesome. Yeah, and to add on, I heard, I was talking to someone yesterday about this talk, and they were like, oh, what are you talking about? I said, security awareness training. And they were like, oh, cool, like, what is it? So they were telling me that they had heard at this company that every meeting that they start, no matter what it's about, it could be the security team, it could be a public, whatever, every meeting they start with a security tip. So whatever it is, like, make sure you lock your computer. Continue on with the meeting, or don't take photos when you're on your office site, or don't share this publicly because this could harm our, so whatever it is, but being able to tip those things out at intervals and keep security on people's mind as they go. Okay, any other, like, I have a problem, I don't know what it is. Let's give, anybody else have anything? Yeah, over here up front. Oh, we'll go to you next. Yeah.
So we deal with doctors a lot,
Okay.
and they push back a lot whenever we want to implement some new security policy. One main one being when they go into an exam room, they want patient data up and ready for them to log on. We've done things like smart cards and PIN codes to try and alleviate the impact on them. But I was curious what other people do to either get through to doctors so that they understand why it's important and stop complaining, or maybe not on topic, but if someone has suggestions on this type of scenario, you can tell me outside or something.
Yeah. Okay, who's got users who don't want to follow the security policies? Because I'm sure that's everyone here. So any ideas? What's your name? Jeremy. Anybody got anything for Jeremy? Yeah?
You could use the badges and near-field communications to alert the PC that this doctor is within proximity. You could also train the office staff. By the way, the doctor needs to know. Do it for him. What are they supposed to do anyway? Fill out paperwork?
Cool. I have, you have an idea? Okay. One of the things I recently was working with a password management tool that is thinking about implementing having, if you have your phone, I don't know if doctors carry their phones with them in operating rooms, but if you walk up to your computer and you have your phone nearby, it actually auto-unlocks it. So they're doing stuff over Bluetooth and some Wi-Fi tools. So there are things like that out there to make it easier to set that up and have easy access when it's needed. Okay, you had another issue.
An issue, but
Okay.
I was kind of thinking about how
Can you lift the mic up a little bit?
I was thinking about how hard it is. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. And every security awareness training I've had at all my different companies and different jobs has been annual. And that just seems like a really, really long time in between training. And I'm always surprised that it's not monthly. There's a talk about it or a refresher. Yeah, but you can do it cheaply, The communication doesn't have to be expensive.
Right.
There's a lot of cheap ways to communicate, but do it regularly and more often. I was always surprised that security awareness training was an annual thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I work on our compliance team and governance, and I think the driver for a lot of that is that compliance checkbox of, did you train your employees, and is it done annually? And some people are doing that bare minimum. And it works, maybe. It solves your compliance issue, but yeah, it's not enough. So as I talked about availability and having that, keep it going, there are many ways to send out and keep the conversation going outside of that once-a-year video, or like stagger your trainings and send messages in that newsletter from the security team that has some new tip or new issue or new thing, whatever it is. Yeah, so that's a real challenge. And I would love to see people doing these trainings more often. And even if it's, I mean, there's plenty of material that already exists, right? You said it's expensive. It doesn't have to be. There's a lot of things that exist on the internet, out there, whatever. If it's an article or something on YouTube and you send it out to people and it's quick, there's a company right now that's doing security awareness training, like advertisements that are very fast. They're like under a minute and they're hilarious. The whole point is to get you laughing and just thinking about it. So those things are there, and it's really our responsibility as the security team to get that in front of people's eyes. At least my perspective. We had one more back here. One more thing to add or ask.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the video, for example, and I was already thinking, how can I implement it in my own company, like inviting other people from other teams, like engineers or, I don't know, people from product to talk about some security topics that involve them in the process, and they can be the security champions in that area, for example.
Love that.
But the idea also is, if through my policy it's mandatory for everyone to do security training annually, whatever, how can I track who did the training? Because one of my ideas was also to like do a Google Forms where you need to go through a questionnaire, but that doesn't mean that the person went through the video anyway. So how can I solve that problem?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have a content management tool that if you assign something to a user, you see how far they get through the process. So you have that checkbox and you have the list of people that saw it, the list of people that completed it, and whatever it was. But if that's not something that's available and you're offering this training to your users, employees, whatever it is, and you're able to say send out that video, maybe your Google form or your thing that's attached to it is a quiz. So we have a quiz that follows up our video that you have to fill out the answers, you have to get whatever score. And we're not trying to trick people, we want them to learn. So one of the questions is like, if you have a question about what to do, like something in this policy goes against your job, these are your 4 options, what do you do? And like one of them was like, egg the security team's house, complain about it in our Slack application, I forget, cry, and file an exception. It's like, yeah, it's obvious, but just getting people to like think about it and have that follow-up. So maybe, I don't know if this is like would satisfy an auditor, but if really what you're trying to do in the training is get people to understand the topics, if you follow up with that quiz, that could be enough to say, if you're answering all these questions, then you get it. You know what we're talking about and this is why we're taking it forward. So that's one idea. Okay, I think we're coming up on time. Just want to do a quick recap. The what, the why, and the how. So you guys have had really great feedback and questions for each other. I encourage you to continue this conversation outside of this room. We still have a whole half a day here at BSides, and then I know a lot of people are here for the rest of the week. So really thinking about that, what is the gap? What are we trying to work towards? Why does this matter? And then the how, ways to train your users, okay? You are all now security superheroes. Go out and train your users. I'm going to open it up just for questions for the last few minutes. If you have any, feel free to ask. And then I'm going to also be at the Rapid7 booth just around the corner if you want to come ask me about questions, phishing campaigns, tools, whatever it is that we use, feel free to do so. So thank you, everyone here. I hope you have a good B-Sides. Yeah.
A quick one.
Yeah.
How professional are your videos?
Yeah, so we had a question up here that said, and this is totally a culture thing, at Rapid7 we are totally laid back and relaxed. We can do weird things where our security team's jumping up and down and like whatever, and we had someone say like, well, that wouldn't fly in my company. Like nobody would get it, they would turn it off and just be not cool with it. So that's a balance that you have to work on. For us, we do have a camera and like a room in-house. We had our marketing team and our communications team work with us to create this video. And it is hosted on our content management system, but it doesn't have to be that professional. As you were saying, you could get people in front of a cell phone and record them talking about security and why it matters and put it on YouTube, and that's what you send out. So it doesn't have to cost a lot of money or be really expensive to get the message out that security matters, and you need to do this not just at your office, but in your day-to-day life, that every moment that you're thinking about security, you're going to be safer. And we collectively will be safer, hopefully. Thanks. Well, maybe one more? Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have any tips for working with people who actively reject essentially spending time with security training and so on, simply because they state, I've been working in a security company as a security engineer or a secure software developer or whatever for so many years, I don't have time, I have a deadline coming up. So if you give me this questionnaire, I'm going to have one of my people in my team to do that, write up all the answers and then distribute it to my team because I need to hit my deadlines. And that person, in that case, actually had his domain password as password 2014 in 2018.
Those are fun, right? Those are those experts that are experts but don't get the basics. So, yeah, and you know what? That's something we're forever going to be running into. But it can be nice to invite people, like, as I said earlier, put on that beginner's mindset. And if you frame it as like, I know we're all busy and we all know this stuff, but we're going to talk about it anyway. And having those reminders and those password, whatever, having the posters up, like all of that gets people to think about it more often. And yeah, maybe there are those outliers. Maybe you throw the book at them and say, you have to do this for our audit or we're going to be in big trouble. So there's many, many ways that you can address it. Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know. Maybe someone in here has it, and we can keep this conversation going out in the hallway because I think we're wrapping up. But thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope if you have questions, you come talk to me afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much.